gardener and friend of the public library. And today we're at the South Plains Food Bank GRUB farm. It's an urban farm, and we're going to talk with some of the staff here about what's going on. The food bank works with the Texas AgriLife vegetable specialist here in our area so that they can figure out which crops grow best in West Texas. So there's a lot going on here. The food that's raised here is shared through the food bank and also through the GRUB program. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. I'm talking now with Sandy Garcia and Shawnee Betancourt, and they both work with the GRUB program here at the South Plains Food Bank. So we need to know, Sandy, what's the GRUB program?
It stands for Growing Recruits for Urban Businesses.
And how does it work? Who are these recruits?
These are teenagers from age 12 to 17. I go out to the schools, to different events, and try to recruit some of these teenagers. And out of those kids that do come out and volunteer throughout the school year on Saturday mornings, then during the summer we get to hire 20. But in the meantime, during the school year, we give them all types of classes. The community comes out and give classes on life skills and job skills. And then so during the summer, when it's time to hire those 20 kids, that's the pool that we use to hire these 20 kids for to work out here.
And Shawnee, tell us a little bit about how it's funded.
So the GRUB program is funded through a CSA program, so we are able
And tell us what CSA is, Community Share?
Yes, it is
Okay.
a community share program that we have, and we are able to have about 100 shares per year. And so a person can purchase a share for $350, and they are able to come out starting in June every week, once a week, typically on a Thursday or Friday, to pick up that week's harvest that the kids planted, harvested, and maintained themselves. And this typically goes on for a few months.
That sounds great. And Sandy, I know that the kids do some other things too, in addition to the harvesting. I've seen them at some of the farmers markets, or tell us about the soap they make.
Well, we grow loofah out here, and then the kids, first they plant it, they take care of it. Once it's ready to harvest, they harvest the loofah, and then we have to let it dry for a while. And then they take off the first layer, and then we put it in, we have to wash it and all that. But then we use that loofah to make some soap. The kids, that's the only fundraiser that we do with the kids, so it's
But the
pretty
kids
neat.
are learning. I mean, I bet not many of them have ever made soap
No,
before.
and they're very surprised that we can do soap using the loofah soap. It's pretty exciting for
And that's probably a popular item for people to purchase
very
too.
very popular, especially for this year. We had a lot of requests with COVID and everything. They wanted to give to the nurses for appreciation, so they were really excited. We had a big order for 111 and like 150 soaps, so it was exciting for the kids to try to meet that.
That
So,
sounds great. Well, Sandy and Shawnee, show us the herb garden that's
Oh.
here. What's growing?
Okay, well, right here we have some mint. The mint just loves it here.
I'm gonna
it's the mint.
Smells wonderful.
Yes, and over here we have our basil. This we transplanted. Then we have some oregano over here.
And I bet that's good with Italian food too.
We started out that we were going to do a pizza herb, garden, and this is how this started. But now we use it. The plants that love a lot of sun, the herbs that love a lot of sun, we just put everything over here. And on the other side, we started our pizza garden. So
Here we have coriander that is going up to seed. It originally starts as cilantro, and then once it matures and blossoms like this will turn to seed, and that's how we get our coriander.
I'm talking now with Cody Dotson, who is the manager, the farm manager out here at the South Plains Food Bank farm. Let's go look some more at what's here and what some of your farming practices are.
Sounds great.
So tell us how you're reusing this old boat here.
So these boats make pretty good beds for root crops, so we decided to put a bunch of garlic in them and see how they did. The moisture retentive fiberglass sides keep it from draining too frequently. It lasts a lot longer than we would otherwise.
So you've got a great crop coming here that's a great way to recycle some old boat.
Looks
Good.
pretty crafty as well.
It does. So tell us a little bit about the fields out here. What's the size of the farm?
The farm is 5 acres total and 3.5 in cultivation and under cover.
And so here in the spring, tell us about the fields and what's going on.
So we do winter prep. We do a light tilling on the surface to make it soft enough to come through with our plastic implement, or plastic laying implement. And then we put out roughly 5.5 miles of rows. The plastic is to keep the hydration stuck in the soil.
It probably helps with weeds as well.
Most certainly, the weeds, for the most part, the only thing we do see coming up is the sedge nutgrass, Bermuda, and lakeweed.
Those are pretty hard to.
Yeah, they're pretty
rid of.
problematic. Fortunately, it generally requires chemical maintenance to keep them beat back, but for the most part, we do it all by hand. We don't do any kind of herbicides during the year generally, once the planting season started.
Yeah, great harvest food that's safe and healthy then for people to come to
Completely
get the
organic.
share.
Yeah.
Right.
It's fantastic.
How many different varieties and plants do you grow here?
It varies from year to year, but generally we are over 40 varieties, somewhere between 50 and 60.
Wow. Okay. So is some of that experimentation?
Most certainly. We've started doing yard-long beans instead of regular pole beans, just because they produce a longer, heavier bean per area. We were averaging something like 1 pound per 4 foot of trellis.
Here we are in the area where there are a lot of raised beds. So tell us a little bit about what's planted and even just some of the growing practices in raised beds.
So we try and use the raised beds for a lot of root crops and leafy green vegetables. The Lubbock area is pretty inundated with root nematodes from what I understand. And the idea is to essentially have an area that dries out in the winter and provides a less hospitable habitat to root-borne nematodes.
To the things that we don't want.
Yeah, it causes them to kind of try and percolate up through the soil to get to the food rather than being able to just transit sideways.
Sure.
Yeah, so this 9 beds right here will provide enough leaves every other week for 100 people.
That's a pretty good harvest.
Yeah, it turns out pretty well, and we've used it for 2 years so far, same method.
Now, I noticed that you have some irrigation here. Tell us a little bit about how you water the beds.
This is a drip tape, and we do, for the greens and the root crops, generally a 1 foot spacing on the drippers. I think it's something like a gallon and a half.
Great. Good. That's great. And so you said that these 8 beds all have greens.
Yes, Swiss chard.
Great. Good. And tell us about this bed that's behind you. This is not leafy greens.
No, most of this is sunflower relatives and wildflowers. It's just an ornamental project that we do to kind of beautify the area. But there are some actual wild forageable edibles mixed in here. Hollyhocks are edible, as well as the wine cups, which have a edible tuber.
Cody, I've really appreciated you showing us around and showing us what's here. If people want to come visit, is that a possibility if they'd like to come see it?
Most certainly. We're open 7 to 3 in the afternoon weekly, and then occasionally on Saturdays as well when the kids are out here.
That's good. And they just show up?
Yeah, anytime between those hours, and we always welcome volunteers, and we do little tours if those people are interested in it. Look forward to seeing you.
so people can come out and check it out and then maybe volunteer and learn more about what's happening out here.
Yeah, most certainly. It's always nice to connect with the community.
That sounds great. Now, today we certainly have had plenty of wind while we've been making this video. Any other comments about planting and winds or hints for home growers?
I think the most important part about growing here in the Lubbock area is just to keep it out of the wind, and a little bit of shade always helps everything. The UV levels here in Lubbock are pretty high. It tends to burn plants first get them in the ground.
So somehow provide part of the shade and certainly lots of water for sure.
Yeah, a little semi-opaque cover cloth or something like that goes a long way.
That sounds good. Thanks so much for visiting with us today and telling us more about the Food Bank Farm.
You're welcome.